My name is Mara Solis, and I used to think loneliness was the worst thing a person could feel. Then I met Kale 9, and I learned that loneliness can be a kind that burns colder than space itself. It began in late October, on the high desert plateau of northern Chile, where I worked as a night shift telescope operator for the Atacama Array. The observatory sat at 5,000 meters, so far above sea level that the stars looked close enough to cut your fingers on. Most nights I had the dome to myself. The other astronomers were asleep in the residence building. Only I stayed awake, drinking yerba mate gone cold and listening to the hum of the mirrors as they tracked whatever patch of sky the scheduler demanded. That night the scheduler had pointed us toward a dull patch of sky in Fornax. Nothing special, just routine follow-up on a gravitational wave counterpart. I was half asleep in the control chair when the proximity alarm screamed. Not the gentle chirp of a meteor or satellite. This was the shrill, panicked howl reserved for something large, metallic, and coming in hot. I bolted upright. On the external cameras I saw it. A sliver of silver-blue light skimming the ridge, too slow for a meteor, too silent for any human craft. It banked once like a bird deciding where to land, then dropped behind the service road. I should have called Santiago. I should have triggered the emergency beacon. Instead I grabbed a flashlight, pulled on my down jacket, and walked out into the dark. The air at that altitude is thin and sharp. It slices your lungs like broken glass. My breath fogged in frantic clouds as I followed the ridge. Half a kilometer down the maintenance track I found it. A seamless ovoid the color of moonlit mercury, no bigger than a city bus, half buried in red dust. Heat shimmered off its skin even though the night temperature was -15°C. A seam appeared without sound. A ramp unfolded like liquid metal pouring downward, and he stepped out. He was tall? Short. Humanoid is the best I can do. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but everything was slightly wrong, as though someone had taken a human silhouette and stretched it along an alien axis. His skin was matte black shot through with moving points of light, like the night sky compressed into flesh. When he moved, constellations shifted across his arms and chest. His eyes were pure white, no pupils, yet I felt them find me and focus. He raised one hand, palm forward, in what might have been a greeting or a warning. I should have run. Instead I took one step closer. That was when he touched me. His fingertips brushed the sleeve of my jacket, barely a graze, but the contact lit up my nerves like I'd grabbed a live wire. Where his skin met the fabric, tiny motes of light sank through the nylon and into my arm. I jerked back, staring. On my forearm, glowing faintly beneath the skin, 5 perfect fingerprints shimmered. Silver white, edged in violet, swirling slowly like galaxies seen from above. He tilted his head, studying the marks as though surprised they were there. Then he spoke, not with sound but directly inside my skull, a voice like distant bells. I am sorry. My biology is expressive. His name, he told me, or let me understand, was Kale 9. He was a cartographer of dying stars, a solitary archivist sent by a civilization that no longer had planets, only ships. His vessel had suffered a cascade failure in its phase drive, while mapping the far side of the Magellanic Clouds. He had limped across 90,000 light-years on emergency propulsion, looking for a quiet place to die. I should have been terrified. Instead I felt the strangest grief, as if someone had told me the universe itself had only days left to live. You're not going to die here, I said aloud. My voice cracked in the cold. He looked at the fingerprints still glowing on my arm. Your cells are compatible. They accept the imprint. This is unexpected. He took a step back toward his ship, but his legs buckled. The constellations on his chest dimmed. I caught him before I thought about what I was doing. His body was warm, warmer than human, and where my bare hands touched his arm the starlight flowed again, brighter this time, racing across both of us like spilled mercury. I half-carried, half-dragged him into the observatory storage shed, an unheated metal box full of spare parts and emergency oxygen bottles. I laid him on a tarp and ran for the medical kit. When I returned he was sitting up, but the light inside him flickered like a dying bulb. Your star is too small, he said inside my head. Its fusion spectrum lacks the high-energy photons my cells require. I will fade within 3 of your days. I thought of the telescopes, the mirrors, the concentrated sunlight we could focus if we needed to de-ice the domes. We have light. We have a lot of light. He watched me with those pupilless eyes. You will kill yourself trying to save something that was never meant to live in your gravity. Better than doing nothing, I said. That was the beginning. Over the next 48 hours I broke every rule the observatory had. I rerouted the auxiliary mirror array to track the sun instead of the scheduled targets. I lied to the day shift about equipment failure. I smuggled Kale, 9, into the control room at night, wrapped in thermal blankets that did nothing to hide the starlight leaking from his skin. Every time I touched him to adjust an 4 of saline, pointless, but it was the only thing I knew how to do. The fingerprints multiplied. They spread across my arms, my collarbones, the side of my neck. By the second night I looked like a negative image of the Milky Way. The marks didn't hurt. They felt like warm champagne under the skin. He grew stronger under the focused sunlight. I grew stranger. The marks began to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. In the mirror I would catch entire constellations sliding across my ribs. When I was tired they pulsed in time with my heartbeat. And sometimes when Kale 9 was asleep or whatever his species did instead, I heard faint music, choirs singing in frequencies that made my teeth ache with beauty. On the third night he could stand unaided. He walked to the open dome and looked up at the sky he had crossed to reach me. I can repair the drive, he said. But I will need a quantity of refined tungsten and a magnetic bottle capable of holding 10 Tesla. Your species does not possess these things openly. I laughed, a sound like breaking glass. We have a particle accelerator 200 kilometers north. They definitely have magnetic bottles. He turned those white eyes on me. You would steal for me? I would burn the world down if it kept you here one more day, I said, and only realized after I spoke how true it was. We made plans like conspirators. I called in every favor, forged access forms, lied with the fluency of the truly desperate. But before we could leave the plateau, the marks on my skin began to burn. I woke in the control room chair with my arms on fire. The fingerprints had turned from silver to angry red, then to ultraviolet that hurt to look at. Kale 9 knelt beside me, his own light dimming in sympathy. The bonding has progressed too far, he said quietly. My cells are rewriting yours to match the spectrum I need to live. If I stay, you will become like me. If I leave now, the change may reverse. But I will die. I stared at the galaxy blooming across my chest. How long do I have before it's permanent? Hours. I laughed again, properly this time. Then we don't have time to steal anything. You're leaving tonight. He reached for me, stopped himself before touching. Mara. No, I stood up, swaying. You crossed 90,000 light-years alone. You are not dying on my mountain because I was too selfish to let you go. I helped him back to his ship. Every step left new prints on my skin, brighter, more intricate, until I glowed like a nebula. At the ramp he turned. There is another way, he said. I can take you with me. The ship is small, but it can sustain too. You would never see your world again. Your body would finish the change in transit. You would become compatible. I looked back at the observatory, at the life I had built out of silence and starlight. I thought of my mother's house in Santiago, of the cat I had left with neighbors, of the PhD I would never finish. I thought of the way his fingerprints felt like promises written in fire on my skin. Will I still be me? I asked. You will be you, he said, plus everything I am. It is not a small thing. I took his hand. The final constellation flared across both of us, bright enough to cast shadows on the red dust. The ramp closed. The ship lifted without sound, a sliver of starlight rising into the greater dark. Inside, there were no controls I recognized, only walls of liquid night. Kale 9 placed my palm against a panel and the ship spoke in my mother's voice, then in languages I had no name for. We left atmosphere in a breath. For 3 days we drifted while the change finished. My bones sang. My blood turned silver. When I cried, the tears floated away as tiny perfect spheres of light. On the 4th day I stood beside him at what passed for a window and watched the sun shrink to a yellow star like any other. Regrets? He asked. I lifted my arm. The fingerprints were no longer prints. They were whole galaxies turning slowly alive. None, I said. We set course for the far galaxies, for stars that had not yet been born when I was. Sometimes I dream in radio waves. Sometimes I wake to find new constellations have migrated across my ribs while I slept, messages he leaves without words. I am no longer entirely human. I have never been more alive. And everywhere he touches me, even now years later by ship's clock, centuries by the clocks we left behind, he leaves starlight fingerprints on my skin. They never fade.